we're going to bring you 3 rounds of battle deck action. What are battle decks? They're pretty cool. And they are. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it right down to our action right now.
I mean, do you remember the precons of old? I certainly do.
Precons of old.
Yeah,
Battle
baby.
decks are created by none other than Chris Van Meter himself. And there is Chris Van Meter playing Trial Run, the battle deck, against the Professor. These battle decks, these battle decks are low-cost ways to get complete decks that are balanced against each other.
I think they're $10, if memory serves me right.
$10.
Yeah.
$10. That's right. And I want to point out what we've got here. Trial Run in the hands of Chris Van Meter against the Professor playing License to Mill. You want to tell us about these 2 decks?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Trial Run deck is kind of a deck. It's a deck that was, of course, made by the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Van Meter himself. I mean, he's playing a lot of different – it kind of reminds me of the Heroic deck, the Blue-White Heroic deck. He's playing a lot of different cartouches and a couple of different effects to bounce some of the trials that go along with those cartouches. The creatures that Chris Van Meter is playing, he's playing 12 creatures, 4 copies of Denrova Horror, a Pauper All-Star Powerhouse in Pauper. He's playing 4 copies of Shadow Mage Infiltrator. John Finkel himself, Johnny Magic himself.
Mm-hmm.
That card is amazing. It's got Fear on it, the old school Fear mechanic.
Right.
It's got an Ophidian mechanic. When it hits your opponent, you draw a card. Find more cartouches. Find more trials. It's an awesome deck, and in the hands of an experienced pilot like Chris, I hope we can see it shine. On the opposite side,
License to Mill.
License to Mill.
It goes without saying what this deck is all about.
Oh. This deck, it's a mono. I mean, if blue is quote-unquote the most powerful color in Magic, this is certainly exemplifying that. I mean, it's a pure blue deck.
We're talking 4 Jace's Erasures, Millstones, 4 Curse of the Bloody Tome, 4 Psychic Corrosions. We've got a suite of kind of hold off and don't die cards like Wall of
Bank,
Frost, Fog Bank, Elixir of Immortality.
At the very top, you've got Patient Rebuilding, which is an absolute bomb, a sweet card.
And let's talk about the Professor has the License to Mill, that mono blue deck. If you've been watching, you've seen these deck techs already.
Yeah.
And this is pretty cool. Chris Van Meter, again, the creator of the battle decks. He balances these. These decks are really well balanced against each other. A great way to just have some fun, to play without sleeves.
Absolutely.
Right? Really cool. And looks like Chris Van Meter, CVM, has mulligan to 6. Professor is on the draw, is on the play, and there's a quicksand.
Yeah, another Pauper All-Star.
Just a casual quicksand.
Absolutely, a way to go ahead and stop the attacks from Chris, but potentially not a good answer versus that deadly Shadow Mage Infiltrator that we've always talked about. Fog Bank, the deployment from the Professor.
Fog Bank.
Fog Bank's a sweet one. It's an old school card. It's old school.
Yeah, I remember. There's like raptors on the original art.
Yeah,
like
that's
lost
right.
In the
Yeah.
fog, right?
Sheathen Raptor,
Yeah.
I believe, is the card in the old artwork.
So that card from Chris Van Meter is none other than Disowned Ancestor.
Okay.
Disowned Ancestor. And
Jace's Assurance getting deployed right here. A mill card for the Professor, so he's going to get online with attacking that deck total.
Yeah, and Chris is going to pop this Evolving Wild so he doesn't lose all of his mountains to the Jace's Erasure, which mills, I believe it is.
Every time the Professor draws a card, he mills 1 card.
Okay, yeah.
So certainly a combo with a couple other cards that the Professor has in his deck.
And there's the draw, and there should be a mill.
CVM has that's an Is It Charm, one of my favorite cards. Yeah.
Is It Charm. So folks at home, this is round 1 of 3 of our battle deck action. And this battle deck action is battle decks that you can find on cardkingdom.com. They're created and balanced against each other by CVM. And here is CVM, the grandfather of the battle decks.
Absolutely, yeah. He's been designing these decks for at least for a long time. I mean, there's a lot of different iterations. There's a lot of different battle decks that have constantly come out over the years.
Yeah.
I've gotten an opportunity to play with a lot of them, and they're well balanced. They're really interesting. They're a lot of fun.
And there's a mill from the Professor.
CVM with tons of red mana. And it looks like he's deciding if he wants to go with a cartouche, I would assume. Maybe a trial here.
could
Okay.
be. And there is, I believe that is a Chandra's Pyro Helix. That deals 2 damage divided any way Chris Van Meter likes.
That's the fire side. Yeah, the fire side of Fire and Ice.
Yep. And that just took care of that fog bank. Now Chris Van Meter can get in with the
0-4
disowned ancestor.
Yeah, I think
The
he's waiting
0-4?
around for a few of those enchantments, those cartouches, to really start going. But he does have opportunities right here. Both players are a little stalled right now. We see Chris Van Meter milling 1 card.
If you would like to see the deck list on these decks, log on to the Card Kingdom YouTube page, and you can find the full decks all laid out on the Card Kingdom YouTube page, that is. Disowned Ancestor number 2 for Chris Van Meter hitting the table.
And Cartouche of Zeal, I believe, is the play.
Wow.
And I believe they get +1/+1 and haste, I believe. And Chris Van Meter also kind of playing an aggro control game as he has access to Izzet Charm, which is a modal charm. It can either spell pierce or counter for 2, and it looks like he's going to go ahead and burn that right there.
Izzet Charm is going to counter the Jace's Perdition, I believe that is.
I believe that's Patient Rebuilding.
Patient Rebuilding,
which
yes.
is actually the big. It is the
That's a big bomb.
Yeah, that is the big bomb for the Professor. And I think he only has 1 other copy of that card in his deck. So, you know, the Professor's seeing a window or trying to get in there with a huge play there.
Right, getting
in
there.
And I think Chris only has 2 copies of Izzet Charm in his deck. So
critical card. There's some outlast action happening for CVM.
Another mill, and I think that was one of those Izzet Charms, potentially the second one in his deck.
The Professor is getting the mill on.
Yes, slowly but surely. The one thing I would like to say is Chris Van Meter now has 3 power, and at milling 1 card a turn, it can be kind of difficult.
And there is probably a sleep, I believe that is. Oh, no, excuse.
Okay.
That is Baral's Expertise. And there also is a mill 5.
That is, and the thing about it, the issue with Chris's deck is that he only has access to 12 creatures. So if his critical cards, his attackers get milled, he could be in some trouble.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The Professor actually attacking around, you know, the outside of where Chris's deck likes to function. I mean, all those enchantments and all those spells, Chris doesn't really have a lot of interaction between all that stuff.
You know what we haven't seen yet out of the trial run deck?
What's that?
No trial.
Yeah, we haven't seen a trial.
Dinrova
Horror. My goodness.
Hits the battlefield.
That's a big creature right there, Dinrova Horror, the Pauper All-Star itself. 6 mana for a 4/4 that when it comes into play, it bounces a permanent your opponent controls, and they discard a card. Traditionally, that effect was called Recoil. That came out in sets long ago, but
and there's
Recoil
that
on a
discard.
Stick. Yeah.
Man. And the Professor kind of needs a critical mass of these licensed to mill cards in order to enable the game plan. And if you're discarding a mill card, that's a big time loss.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, you are watching live Magic action. This is Battle Deck Round 1. We are in the Chalice event. Log on to thechalice.causevox.com to find out more and also to give and support mentorships via Big Brothers Big Sisters, our beneficiary of today's charity event. All of these folks, Chris Van Meter, the Professor, Josh Lee Kwai, James Turner, Michelle Rapp, Ashlyn Rose, Jerry T. Everyone here is here as a volunteer because they believe in – oh, wow. And there's a bounce and a discard on that. On the Professor's enchantment there.
I think that was a Welling Wave, yeah. Potentially. And then more Jace's Assurance. The Professor doing his best to fight for the board right now, but he doesn't have – he would love to have a Fog Bank. He would love to have a Wall of Frost right now and just Chris Van Meter, triple black. We're not casting Necropotence here. Triple Ancestor from Chris Van Meter. Tapping for the Professor, and I think he found the second copy.
There's only 2 copies.
Patient Rebuild. There's only 2. So the fact that he was able to have that on this turn is amazing.
unbelievable. Just when it looks like the professor is on the ropes, patient rebuilding off the top. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then you draw a card for each land put into the graveyard.
And remember, the professor has Jace's Assurance in play. So whenever he draws an additional card off that patient rebuild, that's another card that gets milled by Chris Van Meter.
Wow.
Insane. So there might be a chain where Chris just loses a chunk of his deck.
Sure. And here's a mill 3, and here's a draw 2 for the professor.
Oh my.
He's going to draw 3 cards
mill
this turn.
2, yep.
That's an Ancestral Recall.
Not too bad.
Prof just built himself an Ancestral Recall, and there's a Curse of the Bloody Tome among the cards drawn. That Quicksand's not doing a lot of work against any of the cards in Chris Van Meter's deck. There's
the nice part about the Quicksand, though, is it potentially could stave off some damage that he's receiving.
A little bit
so
of damage.
It might be able to buy him a turn or 2.
Right. There's 3 power from those Disown Ancestors, and, of course, that Dimrova Horror.
Yeah. It is a foot race here as the Professor attacks CVM's deck, and CVM attacks the Professor's life total.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you just tuned in, we're watching that live battle deck action here. Something really sweet and unique. Chris Van Meter designs all of these, and they're all available at cardkingdom.com. $10 for a battle deck. They're balanced against each other. And we've got a great match here already, a great game.
Yeah, and to have some really cool archetypes go together. I mean, look at how many cards are in CVM's deck.
How many?
That does not look like Benny.
What was that, 12 cards?
It's more like cards? One of those, I would say maybe 15. It's one of those carnival games. How many cards are in the deck?
Mm-hmm. Here comes a mill 3.
Oh,
and there's a draw.
Okay.
There's
couple
2 draws
lands,
for the professor.
And
another
then 2
Ancestral
more
Recall.
mills. Well, 2 more mills, and the professor at 4. He needs to find some defense. I think actually, I mean, if we could get a deck total, because that's the way that professor's attacking. I would love to know how close he is.
If that wasn't Engulf the Shore off the top for the professor.
CVM's counting. It looks like about 12, I'd say.
About 12, okay.
Yeah. Engulf the Shore. The professor, he might just have more action, more attack. I mean, if he can get through those 12 cards, he wins the game.
Right.
He doesn't need to worry about defense if he can attack the deck.
Got the Curse of the Bloody Tome out there. Got this Patient Rebuilding out there. That's 5. Got that Jace's Erasure out there.
Yeah. Remember, he does have that Quicksand, but CVM deploying a total of 7 power. So, okay.
If this is an Engulfing Shore, which it... Oh, no, not...
Oh, I do
not
think so.
Professor going to pack it in. Chris Van Meter's creatures will win the day, out-racing License to Mill in the hands of the Professor. Chris Van Meter up now 1 game over the Professor, and this our first round of Battle Deck action. Our competitors are going into Game 2. So cool to see people play Magic with no sleeves. I love that.
Yeah.
I miss those days.
Yeah.
I miss those days, right? Here are our competitors. And I also want to point out, too, that there is some sideboard action here. We have a sideboard starter also available on cardkingdom.com. And the sideboard starter includes stuff like Naturalize, Fragmentize, Pyroclasm, Negate, Duress, Shatter, Fated Retribution even.
Yeah, it's an awesome sideboard.
Yeah, if you're CVM, I think you might be looking at I'm not even sure.
Maybe a couple of copies of Duress. I think are probably making their way in.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. Duress is probably his favorite card coming in. And it would be able to go ahead and attack some of those key cards that the prof may or may not have access to. The one thing I will say, after talking to CVM about this deck construction, we had a conversation last night about the viability of some of these decks. The Domain deck kind of came in question. What's interesting about the Domain deck is it can actually play every single one of the sideboard cards because it's a 5-color deck. So kind of an amazing situation to be in.
Yeah, and there, I believe, is a Fog Bank from the Professor. And that's going to slow down that work by CVM. Of course, he had that Chandra's Pyro Helix to take it out last game.
Yeah.
And here's the Professor. He's got that Patient Rebuilding again, a bomb.
Yeah, it looks like a really awesome card for him to have. He's going to go ahead and deploy a relatively stout defense in those 2, but I think it is the legend himself.
John Finkel, Shadow Mage Infiltrator.
Shadow Mage Infiltrator. This card is awesome. It's a cube favorite. It's a EDH favorite. It's awesome. It's like probably the best Ophidian they've ever made. It's a 1/3 for 3 with Fear. And when it
can only be blocked by artifact creatures or black creatures.
That's right.
Of which the Professor has none.
Of course. And when it deals combat damage to an opponent, you get to draw a card.
So cool. What a great Ophidian. And that was at a time when, that was just on the heels of Ophidian kind of rotating out of Standard.
That's right.
John Finkel was like, this card was great. I want to design this card. And here comes Chris with the blue Trial, I believe. And that is Trial of Knowledge. When Trial of Knowledge enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. When a cartouche enters the battlefield under your control, return Trial of Knowledge to its owner's hand. So that was a draw 3, discard 1 for 4. That's pretty powerful on its own.
Not bad. Yeah, Chris has a ton of cards in hand. It is an incredible amount of advantage here. I think this is Whelming Wave? Or Rising Waters?
Engulf the Shore.
Engulf the Shore, okay.
Yeah, Engulf the Shore, and that's going to return Shadow Mage Infiltrator and the Fog Banks back to the Professor's hand. I'm not sure the Professor knew that it would return the Fog Banks too.
Yeah, I think Chris is motioning towards those Fog Banks right now. The Professor taking a look at all the cards. Yeah, and the Fog Banks
there goes the Fog Banks back to the Professor's hand. And that Engulf the Shore was a mild tempo play for the Professor, and there's another island for him.
I kind of wonder if CVM should have attacked first and then played.
Wow, and there is that patient rebuilding. Professor is going to have some big-time turns coming up here. Lots of opportunity to draw cards, lots of opportunity to mill Chris Van Meter, and CVM coming right back at it, probably deploying the Shadow Mage Infiltrator again.
Yeah, I think he needs to go ahead and put some bodies on the table. And that way he gives an opportunity for his cartouches to get going. I think this is a duress from CVM.
Wisely chosen, as you mentioned, from that sideboard, starter sideboard again, folks. And there is that Shadow Mage Infiltrator redeployed on Chris Van Meter's side. We're going back to the Professor at this time.
The Professor talking about this activation from Patient Rebuilding. He's going to go ahead and draw 2 cards here.
Draw for his turn.
Land for turn from the Professor. I think this is a Jace's. No, I think this is Mill 5.
Mill 5. 2 disowned and 3 disowned ancestors and 2 lands.
The amount of creatures that CVM has access to is limited, and that's important.
So the Professor not playing both Fog Banks now, just one of them.
Uh-huh.
Not sure what the other card is in the Professor's hand.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because Fog Bank doesn't really impact the board. I mean, it doesn't really do a good job of blocking a creature with fear like Shadow Mage Infiltrator.
Sure. Taking a look at CVM here, playing a 6th land.
Tapping for 3, and I think this is a trial here. And he's gonna go face here. This is the red trial, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is Trial of Zeal.
Yeah.
Yes, Trial of Zeal will deal 3 damage to any target. And the same deal, when a cartouche enters the battlefield, you return it to your hand. So
the one thing I'll say about this trial run deck is that the issue with playing these enchantments is that they a lot of times you're paying a premium for the fact that you can recast it later. So in most scenarios, Trial of Zeal is just sorcery speed, 3 damage, right?
Right.
So if you have access to Lightning Strike, that would be 2 mana for 3 damage, which is a better deal.
And so here is the Professor attempted to negate that Shadow Mage Infiltrator, I believe. That's a negate in his hand. That's why he left up that 2 mana and didn't deploy the second Fog Bank. And now Chris said, of course, you can't negate.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Curse of the Bloody Tome.
You can't negate the Shadow Mage Infiltrator, so Prof returned it to his hand. Curse of the Bloody Tome on Chris Van Meter's side now.
And yeah, I'm interested to know how many cards Chris has left in his deck. It's a little tough.
Sure. Do you want to draw cards with this Ophidian effect from Shadow Mage Infiltrator?
I don't know. Is it a may? I think it's a must, actually.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It's an old school card.
Okay, it does say you may draw a card.
Okay, so he can go ahead and put the brakes on if he's going to die.
There is a sort of fine balance, but of course CVM with the didn't roll for hitting the battlefield. Big time card, going to return that Patient Rebuilding to the Prof's hand, not get an activation at upkeep, and now Prof's going to have to discard a card. It's going to be that negate.
Yeah. I think that was a wisely discarded by the Prof. It didn't look like the Prof had a lot of targets for the negate.
And this Fog Bank, one Fog Bank can deal with the Dinrova Horror, but has a chance of losing one of the Fog Banks to a returned Cartouche of Zeal. There goes 2 Fog Banks and that Patient Rebuilding for the Prof, and now the Prof is hellbent.
I believe so, and it looks like that Dinrova Horror is not going to be able to get in for damage unless CVM has access to removal here. And that's one of the big beaters that he has access to, and it's important that that card at least hits a couple times, as you know the Professor's sitting at a relatively healthy 13 life, and CVM only getting in for 2 repetitive damage.
Right, yeah. So we'll take a look at how CVM plays this out. The Prof down to a lowly 13.
Yeah.
Hasn't been able to get much going in the way of milling, really.
We see our
little Sam Tank Cam.
Little
action.
Sam Tank Cam.
Sam Cam.
That's awesome. He's getting in the shot a little bit, and he's taking pictures.
Again, folks, if you're just tuning in, you're watching the Chalice charity event, thechalice.cosvox.com. There is another Trial of Zeal that's going to take care of one of those fog banks.
I like where CVM is going. He's reaching for it a little bit, and he's potentially getting into a position where, and he's going to go ahead and bounce. Oh, he's bouncing all of his trials. So kind of an insane amount of card advantage. The Fog Bank can still block, though, even with the -1/-1 counter. That black cartouches are kind of funny because CVM gets to gain life, except that's not where the Professor's attacking.
Sure, yeah. Not all that relevant. Again, the chalice.cosvox.com. This is the charity event, and we're putting this on. And the folks you're seeing on camera, the Chris Van Meter, the Professor, Jerry T, Ashlyn Rose, Josh Lee Kwai. These folks are all here. Kenji, Igashira.
Yeah.
These guys are all here for one reason, and that is to raise money for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And we need you and your donation right now. The chalice.cosvox.com. Log on and check out all the sweet thank you gifts, too, for making a donation. So log on and make a donation.
I think that's Fog Bank number 3. So it's going to be tough for CVM to get through this wall scenario that the Professor has kind of set up. I think his deck is getting low. I think Chris is probably milling at least 5 cards a turn. So it's and a quick count from Chris.
Maybe 18?
Yeah. That's a good number.
I think about 18, maybe 16.
Yeah, I think more than 15, but less than 20 is what I'd say.
With a double Fog Bank, it's pretty interesting because Dinrova Horror, of course,
Wall of Frost actually even more difficult to remove from CVM's side, as a lot of his removal is damage-based as opposed to destroy target creature.
Wall of Frost, of course, still can't block those Shadow Mage Infiltrators, and there they go in. Dinrova Horror in. And
blocking
this Wall
here.
of Frost could block the Dinrova Horror, but could die to a Trial of Zeal follow-up.
It certainly could. The one thing I'm interested in understanding right now is CVM has to figure out if he wants the damage to go to creatures or to players.
Right.
As damage going to players potentially can save him a full turn, but it looks like he's going to go ahead and aim a removal spell at that Wall of Frost.
Okay, so there goes Trial of Zeal. And another Dinrova Horror. Going to return this Patient Rebuilding and make the Professor discard it. That was the Professor's only source of repeatable mill effect here. Now the the Professor without that Patient Rebuilding, now just with the Curse of the Bloody Tongue.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is that he just doesn't have – my goodness. The Professor needs to draw some help here, and it's an island off the top.
No help for the Prof, and we're looking at 6 damage on board.
Yeah, my goodness. And I think CVM also has an access to one of the red –
One more Trial of Zeal.
Yeah, right? Trial of Zeal for 3. I like this. Did you see the little bit of a head fake that the Prof did? He kind of picked up his mana like he was going to tap. I love that. I love that.
You're a big fan of those mind games. And the Professor clearly, trying to get any amount of leverage he can. And
Oh, he's going to go ahead and activate. Activate his land. Mills for 4. Top card. Does CVM have the reach to get through? You know what? Also important, one of those in Dinrova Horrors, it's still tapped. It's still tapped, but CVM is able to remove the wall. Does he have the attacks? And that's going to be the game.
That's it.
Oh, my gosh.
Good game 4 exactsies, 4-7 exactly. Chris Van Meter with Trial Run taking this match and the game 2-0. Now, James Turner on your left playing Consume the Week. Michelle Rapp on your right with Jungle Rumble. Jungle Rumble is sort of a Naya Zoo-ish type
Zoo
of
deck.
deck. Advent of
Absolutely.
the Worm type of cards.
Call of the Conclave, I believe.
Called the Conclave,
It's
a Watch Wolf
lesser
effect.
Watch Wolf. Yeah,
Right.
it's a cool card.
And here's James Turner. We're Consume the Meek. It's sort of a Jund, mid-range-ish, control-ish type deck. And our competitors are 1-1.
Funny thing about the deck name Consume the Weak, it's kind of a play on a Magic card called Consume the Meek, of course. And all of these names have some sweet thematic play to them. Jungle Rumble, of course, being a Zoo deck.
Right.
Naya Zoo, playing the standard Naya-based cards. I mean, 2-mana 3/3s is the name of the game.
Right.
When you're talking about old school Zoo. Watch Wolf, Scab Clan Mauler, all those cards from the original Ravnica set.
It looks like Michelle has to take a mulligan here. Consume the Weak refers to some of the if my creatures die, I get special triggers sort of thing. Rage Thrower is at the top of the curve.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of interesting. The chat is mentioning that James Turner is going to Jund him out, which is that's more of a more modern Magic term to Jund somebody out, but it's all about the advantage, all about utilizing a bunch of different parts of your bunch of different aspects of your deck.
Yeah.
And
so taking a look, Michelle Rapp, and perhaps this wasn't a mulligan, and this was a full 7.
I think she has a 7.
Yeah. And I believe, she is on the play. There's an Avacyn's Pilgrim. Perfect start.
That's a great start for Michelle. She can go ahead and jump directly into her 3-drops.
James Turner with a Jungle Hollow, gain 1.
Not the most impactful card, as we'll see if Michelle Rapp can go ahead and apply the pressure. It looks like she's got a couple of red cards in hand. And I want to say that's the Ranger that finds a basic.
Sylvan Ranger.
I almost wonder if she's going to get
a mountain.
That's the one color of mana she was missing, and potentially attack with the Avacyn's Pilgrim. Nice little shuffle. The one thing I will note is that with these battle decks, there's a little bit more of manual dexterity. You need to be able to shuffle your deck, search your library for cards. There's a lot of searching up.
The coolest part is no sleeves. I love this.
That's amazing.
These battle decks, they're $10, and $10 is a reasonable amount of money. But
there's rares in them. There's awesome cards.
It's so cool that you get to just play Magic just like you did when you started.
That's right. That's right. Kind of brings you back to those old school, schoolyard lunch table days.
There is, I believe, a Sky Knight Legionnaire.
Yeah, that's an awesome card.
The Guilds of Ravnica card, but making an appearance here in the battle decks for Michelle and rumbling in for 3.
I think that is the artwork on that. I don't know if they've changed the artwork for Guilds of Ravnica, but it looks like the old original Ravnica. Ravnica artwork in there. That's pretty cool.
James, let's see if James can consume the weak and
tapping 3. It looks like he's going to go ahead and deploy a creature. Not certain.
We'll take a look at that one. It could be. That is the Merfolk that makes a 1/1 Merfolk. And we'll get the name for that card for you in just a moment here. These decks use amazing cards.
Yeah.
These are cards that you might have played with in draft, and they're just perfectly.
That's awesome.
There's a 1/1 Merfolk. Who drew that so fast?
I don't know. I think it was. Oh, she drew it right there. That's amazing.
Wait,
that's awesome.
Michelle just drew that in literally 10 seconds.
That's incredible.
In 5 seconds. That's amazing.
In the time it took to try to figure out for us what that card was, there was already a token on the battlefield.
That's amazing. And here comes 4, and that's an Advent of the Worm, and we're seeing a 5/5.
Yeah, one of the more powerful cards for Michelle Rapp. I'd have to say it's a rare. It's instant speed. That card was a big-time bomb in
Return to Ravnica.
Return to Ravnica, yeah.
The second time we visited Ravnica.
To Return to Ravnica.
And there's a 4th land for James. Unfortunately, it's an Evolving Wild, so
Yeah.
any 4 drops he's got in hand.
Yeah, if he's trying to play a red card this turn, he's going to have to wait, unfortunately.
Right. Just looking at black and green mana, and we're untapping here.
Wow, Michelle really has a powerful board. That's a lot of creatures.
Yeah, underneath our round timer there at the top of your screen, that's a 5/5 worm token from Advent of the Worm. And here comes a big-time card. It's Unflinching Courage on Sky Knight Legionnaire.
Oh, my goodness, the return.
James Turner picking it up to take a look.
That
We're going to have a 4/4 flying
Lifelink.
lifelinker.
Does it have Vigilance, too? It has Trample, right? It has Trample.
Oh, my
That
goodness.
is incredible.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Unflinching
Michelle Rapp.
Courage. There's one copy in her deck. She found it.
She found it.
It's almost like Baneslayer Angel.
And there's a
Oh!
counter.
Is that a murder or ultimate price?
Murder. Must be. It's a murder.
It's a murder.
A murder
That
for James Turner.
That's a 2-for-1
It's
right
a Turner
there.
murder.
That's amazing. A nice play from James Turner as he stays in this match. That was almost a huge play from Michelle Rapp. I mean, we're talking about the return of Armadillo Cloak. Old school card.
Right. And that looked big time, but James Turner with the answer. Still, Michelle Rapp holding on to a worm token there.
Yeah, and that 5/5 worm, I mean, it's dominating the board right now. I got to believe that the Consume the Weak deck is going to have trouble answering that. I think the token has Trample, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Well, James had to burn that murder on the Sky Knight Legionnaire with a 2-for-1. But, you know, this 5/5 is going to really be threatening.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for James to answer. But he does have access to 3 mana right now, and he's going to go ahead and build a little bit of a board. I think it's is that a Reassembling Skeleton?
It's a Doom Dissenter is the 2-mana card, and I believe that could be a Blood Baron, the other card.
A Shock being played end of turn for Michelle Rapp. She's utilizing all of her resources.
Oh my goodness, just going straight to the face of James Turner.
Straight to the noggin. Untapped, 3 lands in play for Michelle. Top deck of an Evolving Wilds. And it looks like Michelle's got, as they say in the business, a gas. An attack with the worm token.
That 5/5 worm's coming, and I hope Michelle drew that worm too. So cool. Blood Baron blocking. Doom Dissenter sack to the Blood Baron. And there's another Michelle token.
Oh,
these are amazing.
these
There's
are
a zombie
awesome.
who sacked the Merfolk token to the Blood Baron. And James is going to try to pump this Blood Baron to take out this worm token from Michelle Rapp. And she's got a trick, though. She's got a trick. That's a shock.
And I think that's getting slipped in at the most inopportune time, maybe in response to a sack effect.
Sure. Perhaps in response to the first sack effect might have been...
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Right. So, Michelle holding up this shock, and we'll see if this resolves. James considering he'd have to sacrifice both other creatures in order to keep the Blood Baron alive.
Yeah, it looks like James is going to go ahead and sack one more.
Okay.
And that was a lot of value for that.
So that's an 8/8 Blood Baron. Okay, that's taken now 7 damage and still alive.
Yes.
Still alive.
Yes.
Okay. Here's a follow-up
Michelle
call to Conflict for Michelle.
Yeah.
3/3 Centaur token in play. And
that 3/3 is going to do a pretty good job of controlling the board right now.
There's another sweet 3/3 Centaur from Michelle.
Oh, amazing. Top deck from James. I think it was another land. He's got access to 6 mana here. And
could it be the Rage Thrower in his hand?
what an awesome name for an awesome card. It's a 4/2, I think.
Big time.
I don't believe that's Rage Thrower. Catacomb Sifter is the play.
That is Catacomb Sifter.
I believe it is a 3/1 that makes a Scion that you can sack for 1 colorless, and then when a creature goes to the graveyard, you get a Scry.
Nice. Awesome. That's our thechalice.causevox.com. Make sure you log on now and make a donation. We're all here for that one reason. Our competitors on camera, James Turner and Michelle Rapp, are volunteering their time to make sure that we can get mentors and mentees matched together. 800 kids on the wait list, and you can donate right now and make that possible. Thechalice.causevox.com. Do it right now, and you can listen to our commentary. You know, you won't miss a thing while you're on another screen. We've got Michelle shuffling up after Evolving Wilds, finding
And I think she's going to go. Yeah, she's going to go ahead and go to her turn. James Turner might have stone. Oh, that is a Sky Knight Legionnaire, though.
Sky Knight Legionnaire, number 2 for Michelle. This is a very competitive match. James has a great board presence right now, but Michelle has James all the way down to 11, and now a great clock in Sky Knight Legionnaire. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. A hasting flyer, being able to get over through the Consume the Week board position. Michelle also doing a very good job in stabilizing the counter-aggression that James Turner potentially could have, as she has the 3-3 in play, the Centaur, and a couple of 1-1s to block. So she's doing a fantastic job in maintaining this board state.
Right,
and
so James down to 9.
Absolutely.
Michelle, considering, I'm not sure what her last card is.
Untapped from James Turner.
There's just a mountain off the top. 3 lands in hand for James.
You got to play lands to play your deck.
Excuse me, in this one, it is Rage Thrower.
That is
the big-time bomb from James Turner. And this could turn the game around.
This game could get angry.
Folks at home, Rage Thrower is a one-of in James Turner's Consume the Week deck. Whenever another creature dies, Rage Thrower deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker, and guess who has a sacrifice outlet?
Oh my goodness, it's Rage Thrower in play, 6 mana, 4/2.
Rage Thrower deployed, Blood Baron in play, and there's some fodder there. This Sky Knight Legionnaire will not be a problem for very long.
I don't believe so. And, I mean, it's going to be the thing about it is the Sky Knight Legionnaire might be a little too slow at this point. I mean, Michelle has to attack 5 times in order to go ahead and reduce James' life total down to 0.
Right. Yeah.
The Rage Thrower just goes face.
Right.
And it's going to be troublesome.
Right.
It's going to be troublesome.
Can James now outrace Michelle?
I think it's a good possibility.
Is that what we're seeing?
The one thing that's nice about James's position is that Catacomb Sifter, remember, that's one of the critical cards that he has in play. He can scry to find more gas. Yeah.
Swing into the team. And it looks like James actually passed the turn, not opting for the race.
Okay.
And here comes Sky Knight Legionnaire. And that was a critical turn, a critical choice for James to go for the race now, or
yeah, he certainly could have attacked with the Blood Baron. We're seeing, my goodness, and Hieromancer's Cage getting deployed, an Oblivion Ring effect for 4.
Hieromancer's Cage.
And James is going to go ahead and sack some cards here to try to get some damage in with Rage Thrower.
Okay. That's hitting the Blood Baron. And we're going to sift 1 here with that sifter.
Yeah.
Taking a look at the top card. That's a Scry 1.
And the 2 damage getting dealt to Michelle, and James is considering this Scry. Catacomb Sifter, I mean, the one thing that's really awesome about this Consume the Week deck is that the overall function of the deck is greater than its parts.
Sure.
When all of the cards work together, all of the synergies kind of cook together, it's a really powerful strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Big-time synergy. Taking a look around the room, I'm seeing our Chalice sitting in the middle of the room. I'm seeing, looks like the Prof and Ashlyn are finished with their game. Josh Lee Kwai and Kenji facing off.
It looks like they're in a pretty heated battle.
Right.
As both players.
Going back to James's turn, and that Hieromancer's Cage was a big-time play.
Pretty sick. Yeah, that was an awesome rip from Michelle.
Not sure what's off the top here for Blood Baron, number 2.
Okay, and I think that's the card that Michelle targeted with her Hieromancer's Cage.
Right, yeah.
You know, one of the things is that card, I wonder if James could have sacked it to itself. He could have used the sacrifice effect, gotten another Scry, and another 2 damage with that Rage Thrower.
Let's see if it says another target creature or
it says sacrifice target creature.
Yeah. And sacrifice another creature.
Okay.
Not eligible for that play.
Unfortunate, but not a problem as James has another sacrifice outlet. He just needs to try to race this Legionnaire, and
Oh boy.
Let's go ahead and check out.
That is an Arbor back Stomper, folks. Arbor back Stomper.
It's got a strong back. It's going to carry the game, I think.
Might carry this game. It's got trample. It's a 5/4 with trample.
And hold on here. Gaining 5 when you're racing with Sky Knight Legionnaire.
Who needs a Thragtusk? You got Arbor back Stomp.
It's got 1 more toughness. So it'll live versus a Searing Spear. I mean,
it's got trample.
It's relevant. It's crazy.
Big time play from Michelle.
Trample, super relevant versus this Consume the Weak deck. I mean, you can't just chump block with a 1/1. It's going to get through.
Right. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Michelle with these amazing, this amazing play, these amazing draws, that Hieromancer's Cage and that Arborback Stomper.
Yeah.
And here comes a sacrifice for James. He's going to try to deal 2 to Michelle with the Rage Thrower and get a Sift on here.
Considering that scry effect, and it's going to the bottom, it must have been a land.
Bottom, yeah. Now, are you sacking again to scry?
Oh, man, it's tough to say right now. I mean, James Turner, his life total is dwindling. That clock is pretty hot, and it's one of those things where you kind of need a lot of creatures in play to put together a block on this Arborback Stomper.
Sure, yeah. And James is actually thinking about this. Do I sacrifice this Blood Baron to this other Blood Baron in order to scry and improve my draw?
Yeah,
and he's opting not to.
I think the reason why it was such a heavy consideration there is he needs to find more cards that impact the board.
And unfortunately, that is a Jungle Hollow. Gonna gain him 1 life and not impact the board.
But the life point will matter if he can gain another one. But as of right now, it's a 3-turn clock with just the Legionnaire.
Right. James Turner up to 6. Hieromancer's Cage off the top.
Oh, another removal spell.
Wow.
Another removal spell.
I believe there are only 2 copies in Jungle Rumble, so
yeah,
those are amazing draws for Michelle.
Yeah, she's finding all of the cards that are relevant to this match. She's locking down a lot of the key pieces from James Turner.
I'm thinking this is going to hit the other Blood Baron, and there it is, caged.
Oh, man. And
James Turner extends the hand. Michelle Rapp is going to win this game and the round. Our first round of Battle Deck action. We just saw Michelle Rapp take that with Jungle Rumble over Consume the Week. That's awesome.
It was awesome to see those 2 decks go at it, to see the Trial Run deck and License to Mill go at it. I mean, this round was action-packed.
So they're lining up here on the left. You've got Josh with the Fightin' Fish. I got to see a little bit of him testing this deck at the beginning against Kenji. And this deck's got some power behind it.
It is. It's very explosive. If you have drafted Merfolk and Ixalan, you have a pretty good idea of how this deck is going to play out. It's going to play very aggressively costed creatures, some of which are unblockable, and then just pump them up with counters and triggers from other Merfolk entering the battlefield. So this deck can go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. The only problem is if it runs up against some disruption, it may have a hard time closing the game out. That's where James comes in. James is playing a Jund deck that is looking to gum up the ground with tokens, sacrifice them, play some removal spells, and take out Josh's big creatures and win the long game. So this game is really going to come down to whether Josh can hold on to that early game advantage, get those unblockable creatures online and buffed up early, and if James stumbles along the way.
Yeah, and as you're watching this one, remember that this event is all about the Chalice. It's all about Big Brothers Big Sisters. You can head to thechalice.cosvox.com, and we've got a special thing happening right now with those gifts, which is while you're watching these decks, while you're thinking about how you might be able to not only help someone mentor another, but mentor someone in your own life. When you go up to that 120 level, the bundle level between the pin and the playmat, you're also going to get 2 of those rookie decks and the rookie deck playmat. A great way to get someone started in the game, a great way to help them introduce themselves to this community.
Absolutely. Rookie decks are monocolored 60-card decks that are perfect for teaching someone how to play Magic. They only have 1 keyworded mechanic in them, so they're very simple for new players to pick up and a great way to get a game in.
So we have got Josh, and he is going to be kicking things right off with Kumena's Speaker. That is the 1/1 that gets +1/+1 if you have got an island or another Merfolk, and it looks like it is going to be really early on, just getting aggressive. James already under fire.
Yep, that's a 4/4 now thanks to River Herald's Boon. Really telling, though, that Josh used that on the Kumena's Speaker instead of either playing another creature that turn or playing an unblockable creature early. It's looking like he took a mulligan. He may not have that kind of early game aggression that Merfolk tends to have or needs to have to win a match like this. So this may be an uphill battle for him.
Yeah, and remember that James, removal is definitely something that he is capable of. He's got a few copies of Murder, of Mizium Mortars, and he can even sort of make a removal spell out of that makeshift munitions. Not so much in this case, but, Sprouting Thrynax on the battlefield. Before we got to see him kind of creating his own tokens, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we have there. But it is going to be Water Knot. Tapping it down, keeping it tapped. We're not going to get to see a whole lot from that angry-looking lizard.
Yeah, that's a very effective answer to Sprouting Thrynax. A lot of James's creatures just accumulate value by making tokens, and so turning off that value engine that would normally allow James to trade off that creature and get more creatures out of it, it's just not going to work with Water Knot.
Yep. Worth noting that as the game goes on, though, James is really going to be looking at that as his primary sort of sack outlet. Even there we go, playing out that Blood Baron. This has the ability to sacrifice a creature, give it a temporary boost.
Yep.
That Thrynax looks like a pretty prime target alongside that Doom Dissenter, which makes a 2/2. And that Thrynax is going to make 3 1/1s after it leaves, so it'll be gone but not forgotten.
Also worth noting, James has access to all 3 colors of mana. With some of these battle decks with 3, 4, 5 colors going on, the biggest issue you run into is mana fixing. But thanks to Naga Vitalist and thanks to some fortunate draws on James's part, that part of the game is pretty much handled for him. He can just continue to play out any threat that he has, and he can amass a pretty big advantage.
So we've got a Merfolk deck here that has yet to play its second creature in the hands of Josh.
Yeah, this is not the kind of start that Josh is looking for.
2 Water Nuts, though. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is kind of neat. It is a good way to stem the bleeding, but that's not the position that Josh wants to be in. He wants to be on the aggressive in this matchup.
I'm really glad, because early on I was thinking about making this whole point about how Josh's deck has almost no removal. And, of course, now he's got 2 Water Knots on the battlefield. So, all right, he's got a little bit of capacity. And it looks like that's makeshift munitions that came down.
It is, yeah. So this is an enchantment that will allow James to sacrifice creatures to deal 1 damage to any target. He could choose Josh. He could choose one of Josh's creatures. So if he wants to kind of get that Commander Speaker off the field, he can do so. Or he can just aim straight for the face.
Jade Bear coming down, another +1/+1 counter onto Cometa Speaker, and those words are talking loudly as Josh is jumping across the battlefield with this 5/5, and it looks like James activating this makeshift munitions might be pointing 1 damage there, producing enough blockers as well to maybe go for a really big trade.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it looks like he's going to line up some blocks there.
We've got the Zombie, which is a 2/2. All of those downward-facing cards are 1/1s, and it's going to be a clean block there, a full trade. Josh losing the only threat that he's been able to assemble as of yet.
Yeah, that really hurts if you're Josh. The Merfolk deck really needs those early creatures, and sometimes it sounds like he's just drawn the wrong half of his deck. The one issue that the Merfolk deck can run into, because it plays a lot of spells like River Herald's Boon that put counters on creatures, sometimes you'll draw those and you just won't have a creature to put those counters on. So
yeah,
unfortunately, that Jade Bearer is just going to be staring down James's board now.
Looking at this one, it's interesting because Josh hasn't been playing lands either, so it's not like he doesn't have spells in hand.
That's true.
It's that the choices that he's making on them are in a different direction. So I'm really curious as to what's left in this one. There are a couple of the more expensive Merfolk in this deck, but not so many that I feel like he'd be unable to cast them.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's possible. I know his deck has a Forerunner of the Heralds and a Seafloor Oracle, which are both 4-mana Merfolk. It's possible that he has those in his hand and he just hasn't drawn the lands for them. But it's also possible that he just has more reactive spells, or he has more River Herald's Boons.
And it looks like James has decided on the card that is going to be vital to his game plan.
Oh, that Naga Vitalist.
That was worth it. That was worth it. Back over to Josh.
Josh has drawn another Water Knot here. Not what he wants in this position. He's looking for more creatures, like more ways to flood the board.
Yep, just a pass back here, and it's going to be right back to James. Consume the weak, the Jund deck, swinging on in with these mana producers, but they've got a pretty sizable body on their own.
Right, and Josh is not really incentivized to use his Water Knot on one of these. even if he locks it down to take out James's mana, James still has plenty of lands to cast all the other spells in his deck.
So, looks like we're lining up this forest and this island. I'm a little bit curious because this is the kind of deck. So, one thing that is not in this one of those nice ones where you look at it and kind of think, let's see, there's Mistcloaked Herald. None of those unblockable ones. Unfortunate.
Yeah, he doesn't have a Mistcloaked Herald or a River Sneak, which are both really critical early creatures for his game plan.
So, James at 14, Josh at 15, and he's going to play down. That looks like the Forerunner to me?
That is the Forerunner, so that's going to go grab another Merfolk.
I like that. It's a nice way to refill the hand. It puts it on top of the library, not in the hand, which means that Josh is going to have to wait until next turn. And more importantly, it's not distinctly card advantage. So it's not like he's going to be able to get this and a new card next turn.
Right.
So this is going to be whatever. He's now making his game plan for next turn.
Yeah, and Josh seems a little puzzled about what to get here, and rightly so. That looks like a Vine Shaper Mystic.
It does look like a Vine Shaper Mystic.
So that's a Merfolk that it can put 2 counters on up to 2 target Merfolk. So it can put 2 counters on 1, or 1 counter on each of up to 2. On each of 2, I should say.
I wonder if maybe he does have one of those. Well, I guess if he drew the land this turn, maybe he's got one that can't be blocked. And he might be looking to maybe do like a double spell next turn, assemble 2 of those.
That's possible. The one problem with those unblockable Merfolk is that they start out as 1/1s, and James has this makeshift munitions that'll just let him sacrifice a creature and take it out. So because the Vine Shaper Mystic has 3 toughness, that might have informed Josh's decision to just get the toughest Merfolk he can find.
Yeah, that makeshift munitions really just running the battlefield. So Josh, at the mercy of his draw step, but he already knows what it is, and that's not always the best way to kick things off. Looks like we do have a 3-mana play here. Might have another one, or it might just be a pass back.
Yep.
+1 counter onto the Vine Shaper Mystic, and it's right back. Nope.
Oh, there's a murder.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. Poor Vine Shaper Mystic.
Oh, no. Jund is Jundin. Consume the Weak, living up to its name, but at this point, I don't know if it was Josh's board or his or James's creatures.
Right. Yeah, James is Junding him out, as he and his loading ready run companions like to say.
James, I mean, he's going to have to get familiar with this. He's actually lining up to do Jund for basically the last 6 rounds of this tournament, looking into how tomorrow's going to go for him as well. He's got something real sweet cooked up for tomorrow in that block party. So, Josh Lee Kwai assembling just a couple. I just don't know if they're going to be really able to take this one down because the makeshift munitions really cleanly answering one of these.
Yeah,
now
those 2/1s are not going to go very far.
No. Is that a Slum Reaper? That looks like a Slum Reaper.
Slum Reaper.
A
They're each going to
4/2
sack a creature.
for 4. Each player sacrifices a creature. You see Josh loses 1 hope that he was sitting on, a 2/2 getting across. And now, I just want to say a quick note here. Thank you, everybody. It looks like we are sitting at over 5,000 on the day. An incredible accomplishment.
Wow. Thank you, everyone. That's amazing.
That is just amazing. Let's keep that party going. Check it out, thechalice.cosvox.com. It'll be in the chat. Keep that going. The amount of momentum there is just incredible. Remember, every $450 means that you are getting someone off of that wait list, 800 long, and you are putting them into that relationship with another person that can offer that guidance, that mentorship. It's such an incredible thing to see that kind of number on this day.
Absolutely. And we're so glad that you're all joining us in chat, joining us on social media. Keep posting on social media with the hashtag #CKChalice. We love hearing your impressions of this event.
Looks like it's going to be another Slum Reaper, just getting rid of the previous one. The zombie continuing to do what it do.
Strict upgrade.
3 life here. Strict upgrade. This one with noticeably less water included.
Yep. Well, there's a Jungle Born Pioneer. That's going to put 2 more bodies on the field, and notably that token has hexproof. But it looks like these are going to be in chump blocking mode soon.
Rich and Maria relegated to chump blocking duty. Unfortunate.
Sad. Very sad.
Ooh.
Well, there's a Poison Tip Archer. That can get it done for James.
I love that card.
I love it too.
You combine that with this makeshift munitions, and the game's done.
Yep, the game is indeed done. Josh is going to scoop it up here.
So that Poison Tip Archer, whenever...
Yeah, Josh is looking for more sleep effects, something that will tap down all of James's creatures for a turn so he can get in a big lethal swing. And he does have 1 Tempest Caller in his deck, So hopefully he can get off to a better start in this game.
So we are going to have Kumina speaker early on, and it's going to be followed up by, hey, look at that.
There's River Sneak. That's what he
Okay.
wants here.
I like this. When you play a merfolk, it gets a little bit of a boost, a boosted morale, I like to think. It's kind of energized by
Yeah.
all the friends being there, much like myself at this event.
Oh, yeah. Get in there, River Sneak.
Most people call me TJ, but I appreciate the support.
So yeah, River Sneak is a really solid card. It gets +1/+1 until end of turn when you play or when a merfolk enters the battlefield. But many of the merfolk in Josh's deck also put counters on creatures. So if he can buff up that River Sneak, he can definitely get around some of those Pyroclasm and Shrivel effects that James's deck has.
You mean like that one?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if James just fires off the Pyroclasm here and gets a 2
Oh,
for 1.
he's looking for more value. He's looking for more. Now, one thing is, you mentioned before that the mana base of this deck can be a little bit problematic. He's only got the one mountain, the one forest. You know, it's the kind of thing to where jumping into this format, jumping into these decks, there's only so many points that you can allocate, keeping these cards that are relatively simple. But Pyroclasm!
Oh no.
Oh, you can just see the look of Josh.
Oh,
The
Josh.
defeat, the sweet, sweet 3 for 1. It's just like when he was playtesting earlier up against Kenji, where a Radiant Flames got a 4 for 1 against him early on.
Yeah.
Those sweepers are just so devastating. Josh has got a lot to catch up on now.
That is the downside to playing Merfolk. You kind of put all your eggs in one basket, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yep, much like the creature type of Kitchen Finks, Josh Lee Kwai has got to be thinking, oof.
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 Oofa doofa.
Right back to James. He's got no black mana yet, but a murder in hand. Draws into an Evolving Wilds. He could translate that into a swamp, but it's not going to be quickly. It's going to probably be at the end of Josh's turn. My goodness.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
at this point, Josh is kind of looking to take advantage of James stumbling here, but it looks like he's stuck on 2 lands himself, so very little that he can muster at this point.
Yeah, and the big thing that Josh, he's got a lot of cards that he can cast here. The big issue is that he's not really able to double spell at this point. And that's going to be a huge thing if he's trying to rebuild from that Pyroclasm, you know? Now, James has all the time in the world to find that murder if he had been really on this time delay. Because Josh, untaps, throws down a couple of Merfolk, and is right back to business, attacking for 4 or whatever.
Right. Josh is looking for a turn where he can do something like play a River Sneak and River Herald's Boon in the same turn. And that's just not going to happen at this point.
In the same vein, though, James, while he has just assembled his first swamp, has yet to assemble any sort of pressure, any sort of defensive measures. So he's kind of at the mercy of these creatures that Josh is playing. They may not be much at the moment, but they're the only thing that's there.
Right. Yeah, I think it's any player's game at this point. I mean, that Poison Tip Archer, definitely going to be a good blocker here. I believe that blue creature Josh has there is a Shaper Apprentice. That's the flyer, the one that has flying if he has a merfolk. So
Yeah.
that can start chunking in for damage, and James is at 8. But Josh doesn't have a whole lot of pressure otherwise.
Yeah, and that Poison Tip Archer really notably does have reach
It
in
does have
addition to
reach.
everything else.
Yep.
So not only is it a 2/3 that's holding back the Jade Bear, but it's doing a decent job here, but this might be a real quick block.
That's a trade.
Yeah. Take what you can get. And Josh is hopefully going to have the capacity to rebuild a little bit here with his 2 mana. It's going to be another Jade Bear. Okay. For whatever the situation may be, at least Josh has got 100% of the Jade.
Yes.
If this was a Jade battle, if that ends up being relevant later in this game, I really feel like Josh has got a handle on that.
I don't think there's any Jade in the Chalice, but I could check.
I just don't think we can be certain yet. We're only partway through. We've got a whole day tomorrow where it's going to be the battle block,
Oh, yeah.
the block party.
There's another Poison Tip Archer for James. Very, very good on this board.
All right, so we have got these Jade Bears, 1/1s for 1. It's going to be followed up by a River Sneak. Now, one of these does have a +1/+1 counter. Josh really struggling with that mana, so it's a 1/1 River Sneak that is going to be continually getting a boost from its friends joining the party. And right now, it's just a really effective Poison Tip Archer, holding all of that back.
Right. I mean, it can't hold back the River Sneak, but if Josh can't if Josh can start deploying multiple spells in a turn, he can claw his way back into this. So if, say, he plays a land next turn and plays something like a Jungleborn Pioneer, a Merfolk that makes another Merfolk, then he's getting in for 3, and he can start putting the pressure back on. One thing to note about James's deck, though, he does have those tapped lands from Khans of Tarkir. They do gain a life whenever they enter the battlefield, so he can start incrementally boosting his life total and getting out of range of that River Sneak before he can deal with it.
That Jungle Hollow coming on down, and it looks like we're going to have that neat little 1/1, looks like an Eldrazi Scion to me, and otherwise the Sprouting Thrynax not holding up any of that removal yet. There is the capacity for Josh to get a really big swing in this turn, gets in using that Jungleborn Pioneer, which makes another 1/1 alongside it. That's going to be a nice hit in for 3 because that's 2 Merfolk entering the battlefield.
That is true. James, however, is starting to get his engine online. He has that Catacomb Sifter in addition to the Sprouting Thrynax now. So if he wants to sacrifice that and start sculpting his draws, he can just start to find the cards that he needs to get his way out of this.
Yep, and every single time that he does that, because this Poison Tip Archer, every time that James sacrifices one of his creatures, it's going to deal just little chip shots of damage against Josh.
And that's what James is looking to do, win the long game with little
4
chip
mana
damage.
here, big play, Forerunner. The River Sneak gets its little boost, and this is really the moment that Josh has got to try and put together something. He is unaware that James is holding on to a murder in hand, however.
That's fair. I wouldn't be surprised if, there's the Tempest Caller.
Yes.
So he's looking to end this soon. Interestingly enough, that costs double blue, and Josh does not have double blue at the moment.
Which might be why he's reassessing the situation. The other interesting thing about how that Tempest may not be as effective is that because James is a deck that can sacrifice his creatures, you could tap down all of them, like the Sprouting Thrynax, and then sacrifice it after attacks, and you'll still have 3 things that can actually jump into the fray and provide blockers. So that Tempest, a lot of these cards for Josh, just between the Water Knot and the Tempest, they just don't line up amazingly against what James is trying to do.
That's right, yeah. James also has a lot of spot removal, and Josh does have those hexproof 1/1 Merfolk, but even if James can't deal with them with, say, Murder or Mizium Mortars or a card like Makeshift Munitions, he does have enough chump blockers that even if Josh wants to go all in on that 1/1 and put counters on it, James can just deal with it by chump blocking and attacking back.
Really powerful position here. That Murder was looking it was a nice tool to have, and James still plenty of removal in the deck, so he's not too worried about that one. So my day would
Catacomb Sifter.
My day would be perfect if I saw Mizium Mortars overloaded.
Wow, I mean, that would be wonderful.
Just perfect.
James would need another red mana. Oh, here's a Slum Reaper.
At least there's more to sacrifice here from Josh. He's got the Jade Bear, which is among his most medium creatures out right now. At least the 1/1 token, again represented by Richard Maria, has hexproof.
It does have hexproof, so he's probably going to want to sacrifice the 1/1 Jade Bearer here.
Looks like that is going to be the case. It moves to the graveyard, and James willing to sacrifice one of his Eldrazi. These are Scions, not Spawns.
They are Scions. They are 1/1s.
Big upgrade.
They can attack.
Big upgrade.
I mean, I guess the Spawn could attack. They didn't have Defender.
You could draft Raid Bombardment alongside them.
That is true.
Live that dream. Poison Tip Archer, which means that even as this is happening, Josh is, he's at 18. He's at a really nice life total, but the potential damage on the battlefield right now is pretty impressive. Between that Sprouting Thrynax, which has got another 3 creatures hidden within its cloak. It's really just 3 sapperlings inside a lizard costume.
Yeah.
Which is good in getting a jump start on Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a good I want to do that as a costume. Get 3 people, we'll all dress up as sapperlings, and then we'll dress up in a lizard costume.
That seems cumbersome.
What if we both dressed up as elves and then dressed up as a centaur for the
like Conclave Cavalier.
Yep.
I think that would be more doable.
Okay, a little bit more doable. Okay, so +1/+1 counters aplenty across this board as we're starting to get a little bit more coming together. Still not everything that we need. And is that the Rage Thrower?
That's the Rage Thrower.
Uh-oh.
So now, whenever another creature dies, James is going to deal even more damage to Josh.
Yep, every single time that another one of your creatures dies, deals 2 damage to that player.
So Rage Thrower is actually like Poison Tip Archer in that it doesn't care if the creatures are yours or your opponent's. If there are creatures dying, your opponent is going to take damage.
Oh, man. So combat is really just not good for Josh.
No, he really needs to stick another unblockable creature or have a turn with Tempest Caller. But like we said, James can just sacrifice that Sprouting Thrynax.
And Slum Reaper here, that's just...
Another Slum Reaper, adding insult to injury here. Josh is going to have to sacrifice yet another creature.
And that's 2 creatures dying.
Right.
Which means that the triggered abilities here, both from the Poison Tip Archer and the Rage Thrower, this engine is now officially online. Whoa!
Yep.
Josh Lequai probably not at 110.
No.
Back down to 10.
Nope, that is only 6 damage. He is a 10 here.
A temporary bliss there for Josh as he feels invigorated with health. And then reality comes crashing down upon him, much like the wave that he was hoping to present.
Yep. That Merfolk wave just doesn't seem to be rising anytime soon.
They're great at
Oh, goodness.
Yes. Slum Reaper is just making it happen.
Wow.
I'm digging it. You know, Merfolk really good at sporting events, I'm starting to realize. Always down for the wave.
Oh, goodness. Yep.
Not good?
That was pretty good.
Okay, I'll take it. It's about a B+. I'll take my B+. Catacomb Sifters, 1/1's aplenty. And a rough situation. Josh finds himself down to 4. James, with 22 minutes left, is just really starting to line up this match, solidify his win, and the clock's ticking on Josh. I don't know if there's a whole lot that gets him out of this situation.
There is not a lot that gets him out of this. I believe Josh doesn't have any cards in hand either, but regardless, James doesn't need a sacrifice outlet to get those scions off the battlefield and deal the last couple points of life.
Is that 3 copies of Water Knot?
3 Water Knots.
Whoa,
wow.
my goodness. He thought he could win, but it turns out Water Knot. So James Turner with Consume the Weak taking it down against the Fighting Fish. They are just ending up a little bit filleted and a little bit worse for the wear. Caught
yeah,
up
those
in the net.
fish did not put up as much of a fight as we expected them to.
No. And it is the Jungle Rumble.
It is.
Up against the Trial Run.
The Jungle Rumble versus the Trial Run. One note, Chris Van Meter, in addition to building and designing many of these battle decks, is also the primary architect of the sparring decks. So if you enjoy Chris Van Meter's work, if you've played with battle decks and you want to see what a brawl deck designed by Chris Van Meter looks like, pick up sparring decks. Those are going to be on sale on Monday.
Oh, man. I'm feeling the hype. So, Chris Van Meter up against Michelle Rapp, Jungle Rumble. This is actually another deck that I was really excited about looking at this list. This one is sort of a Naya aggro, always keep swinging. And this deck is just awesome. Sporting copies of Skylight Legionnaire. It's got some of those Relentless Raptors that I'm a really big fan of. And then it goes all the way up to the top in the form of like Advent of the Worm.
Advent of the Worm and Arborback Stomper. Yeah, her deck is looking to go big or go home.
And I have a distinct feeling that she has no intention of going home.
She does not until Monday at least.
Now, Chris, he's a bit more local, so unfortunately both options on the table for him, so he's going to have to ignore one of those.
Yep, Chris playing Trial Run here. This is a control deck using the cartouches and trials from Amonkhet. And he's on a mulligan here. Little bit of a slow start, but those trials are really going to catch him up quickly.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about how this works. When we were looking over the deck list, this really seems like a deck capable of a lot of card advantage. We saw him in the first round of this event really showing what this deck is capable of, and seeing sort of his level of play with these decks, ones that he is maybe the most familiar with in the world. Let's say it.
Yeah, there is no one who has played with these decks more than Chris has.
Going to go ahead and use that Evolving Wilds, grab himself a Swamp. And Michelle Rapp with that Mountain. I got to say, that's my favorite opening play.
Yeah, turn 1 Mountain. Hard to argue with.
I mean, it was off of a not Mountain. It was an Evolving Wilds. But really what that means is that Michelle made the incredible choice to get a Mountain, which is even better.
She did. Interesting choice there. Most likely this deck wants to lead on green because its green creatures can fix her mana. She has Avacyn's Pilgrim in the deck. She has Sylvan Ranger to grab a land if she needs it. It looks like because of that Evolving Wilds, that Avacyn's Pilgrim is going to come down on turn 2, and a little too late because now Chris has the Izzet Charm to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think one curious thing about this is, do you think Michelle Rapp, she's, of course, of the Lorgoyfs, magic lore kind of being her thing. I don't think that she's allowed to make flavor calls in this. Is that true?
I mean, we don't have a flavor judge.
Unfortunate. So it looks like a Disowned Ancestor coming down to the battlefield here for Chris. Not a lot of creatures in this one. It reminds me a little bit of some of those tempo strategies of the past that we've seen. This one, it's Outlast. It's a 0/4 for 1, and it's got pay 2 mana during your turn. It's a sorcery speed ability. To tap it, put that +1/+1 counter onto it. So we're starting to see Chris kind of grow it over time, but 5 toughness already is a pretty sizable creature.
Right, yeah. Michelle's creatures can get big, but not big enough to get past a 1/6 if Chris chooses to make it 1, or a 2/6, I should say. It starts out as an 0/4. Chris's deck is not playing a lot of creatures. As we said, this is a control deck. It is looking to accrue early game advantage with these trials, use Trial of Knowledge to filter through his deck and find the right pieces that he needs to answer what his opponent is doing.
That looks like a Relentless Raptor to me. Does it look like one to you?
It is a Relentless Raptor. So this is a 3/3 for 2 with Vigilance, which you would think is a pretty incredible creature. Its drawback is that it has to attack or block every turn.
Oh, man, the cartouches are already happening. We have got Cartouche of Zeal coming down. That's going to give this +1/+1 as well as haste. And it is just continuing to grow. And the nice part about these cartouches is that they combine so nicely with the trials.
They do.
Those trials, they come down, it's an enchantment, but it's got an enter the battlefield ability. However, every time that you play a cartouche, you can then return them to your hand and really start getting that card advantage, that recurring ability.
Absolutely, yeah. And all 3 trials that Chris is playing in his deck are looking to either get more cards into his hand or answer what his opponent is doing. He has Trial of Ambition, he has Trial of Zeal, which can deal 3 damage to an opposing creature, and he has Trial of Ambition, which can make his opponent sacrifice a creature. So if Michelle is either going all in on one creature or has kind of a troublesome permanent that he wants to deal with, maybe a Skyknight Legionnaire, maybe something like this Draconic Disciple, which can sacrifice itself to make a 5/5, he can pick one of those off pretty easily with the trial. And now we see the downside of Relentless Raptor. It has to attack even if Chris has a 3/7 on the other side of the field.
Yeah, surprisingly not that wise of the Raptor. Not so clever.
Not so clever, girl.
All right, we're throwing it down. Let's keep it going. Let's try and put together some aggression on Michelle Rapp's side.
Yeah, it looks like she's playing a bunch of creatures here.
I mean, that's 3 of a kind. That's got to count for something, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's a big play. I'm in favor of it.
I believe those are all Draconic Disciples, given that she tapped 1 for mana. That looks like the 2/2 that lets you pay 7 mana and sacrifice it to get a 5/5 dragon token.
Yep.
And she can just start sacrificing those pretty soon, and Chris may not have a way to deal with them.
I mean, next turn could start making that happen because remember, there's 3 additional mana on the battlefield through these Draconic Disciples at the moment, and we have got Chris Van Meter here. He is going to go for his Trial of Knowledge, draw a couple of cards, and remember, that means that now a single cartouche, like the one that he has in hand, is going to return that trial back to his hand, and it's going to keep the value incoming.
That's true. Yeah, Chris is looking to hit his land drops here because his best answer to these dragon tokens that Michelle makes is Dinrova Horror, which can return a creature that an opponent controls to its owner's hand, and then that opponent discards a card. So Chris just needs to hit 2 more land drops here, and he can have that online.
It may not look like it, but keep in mind, everybody, that's a fearsome dragon in the middle of the playmat for Michelle.
It is.
Big ol' 5/5 with flying. Likes gold, often found in caves or places that previously had other inhabitants prior to the dragon situation. Big, fearsome, and flying, and that's going to be a big one. Another one of these trials coming down for Chris.
Yep. Chris is still at a pretty comfortable life total there. I believe he is still at 20, as our overlay says. So Michelle can get in one swing, but if Chris can play a land untapped and then get a Drover Horror down, her plans may be foiled.
Yeah, both of these players still had a very comfortable life total. It's been a lot of just build up on both sides. That Disowned Ancestor taking a little bit of time trying to outlast all else. And these Draconic Disciples, while they do seem draconic, we're not actually feeling that aggressive in the face of this Disowned Ancestor.
That's true.
More dragons.
More dragons. Always more dragons.
Oof, 2 of these 5/5s. Sarkon would be proud.
Yeah. I believe the dragon tokens Michelle is using are Card Kingdom dragon tokens, but that one's going to go away because the Dinrova Horror does come down as expected.
Oh, man, and the just value off of a card like that, return target creature to its owner's hand, and then they discard a card?
It's pretty good.
Oof.
It's great. Yeah, if Chris can consistently get these Dinrova Horrors down, he can just make it so Michelle can't amass her Air Force, and that Disowned Ancestor is going to be holding down the fort, along with the Dinrova Horror itself, which is a 4/4.
Yeah. Michelle draws into a shock. Not actually a very impressive card at the moment here. That Dinrova Horror as well as the Disowned Ancestor, both with very high toughness. So it's more just looking at a way to maybe get aggressive, or could try and combine it with another one of these cards in combat.
That's right. Michelle's removal does not match up particularly well against Chris's threats. She has 4 copies of Shock, and all of Chris's creatures have 3 toughness or more. So that is unfortunately not going to get the job done against any of his creatures. She does have Hieromancer's Cage, 2 copies of Hieromancer's Cage in her deck, though the downside to casting one of those on a Dinrova Horror is that once it's come down, its work has already basically done, as we see here with this other dragon token.
No! An Arborback Stomper tries to join the party with its friends, these flying dragons, and now is left all alone with this other Draconic Disciple. Arborback Stomper does gain some life. Michelle goes up to 22, but Chris, 2 of these Dinrova Horrors. What a just champion of a creature.
That's true, yeah. So we see Michelle at 22 and Chris at 10, but Chris definitely has the more commanding board state at this point.
And I think he does have a cartouche in hand, so even if it looks like he's starting to finally run out of cards, not really.
No.
He's going to be able to get those back in hand, play them down, and just keep his hand impressively full. The card advantage of this deck on the right, the trial run.
That is true, and since he has 2 trials on board, if he plays 1 cartouche, he can trigger both of those and return both of them to his hand and get another use out of them.
I have to imagine he would. So we're going to go ahead and play Call of the Conclave as well. That's going to give us a 3/3 on the battlefield. I believe a Centaur.
It is a Centaur. Unfortunately, still vulnerable to some of Chris's removal spells.
Like a Dinrova Horror.
Like a Dinrova Horror. Well, that's a trial of ambition there. Michelle going to sacrifice that 3/3 to it.
Ugh. That Centaur was not long for this world.
It was not.
Sometimes
Got
you
a
need
little
a
too
horse.
ambitious there.
Sometimes you need a horse. Sometimes you need a person. This time, neither got to stick around. So, oh man, that trial of ambition is just so good.
And now the value engine is online.
Oh, 3 trials back to hand. Cartouche of ambition comes down, and this is not only a 5/5 Dinrova Horror. It's a 5/5 Dinrova Horror with lifelink.
It is a 5/5 Dinrova Horror with lifelink, and it also puts a -1/-1 counter on that Arborback Stomper, making Michelle's blocks significantly worse.
You could get a 2-for-1, or I guess not quite a 2-for-1. I guess 2 for 2, but that means that the Arborback Stomper, it's a 5/4, which means that it's now a 3.
It's now a 4/3.
Thank you. That's what I meant to say. And you combine that alongside the Draconic Disciple, which is a 2/2. It means that blocking that Dinrova Horror means that both of them die.
That's correct.
Skylight Legionnaire jumping into the fray, taking to the skies the mighty 2/2, facing down this lifelinking ambitious horror.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said TJ, about 2-for-1s. The liability of playing auras in any format is that if you put them on a creature and that creature gets destroyed, you're losing 2 cards for the price of 1 card that your opponent has. The great thing about this deck, though, is that it mitigates that so well by using those cartouches to get the trials back into the hand, so that even if your creature dies afterwards, you've still gotten so much value out of it.
Trial of Zeal, 3 damage. I love it. It comes down, it deals 3 damage to any target, and yeah, it's one of those trials, which means that if we get another cartouche, it goes back to hand. Oh my goodness, it is all coming together. Is that Chandra's Power Helix?
That is, yep. So Chris is going to take out Michelle's Draconic Disciple and then use Trial of Ambition to get that Arborback Stomper off the field.
And
so now he's going to clear the way for that Dinrova Horror.
Look at this attack situation. My goodness, the lone Dinrova Horror. A little bit surprised that we aren't actually seeing a whole swing with the team. It's going to go right back to Michelle. Hey, okay. Gain a life.
Yep, not
That's
negligible.
Not negligible. All right, so everything coming together. Chris just looking like he is in such a solid position. Michelle counts it up and realizes that that is just not going to end well. That Trial of Zeal still an option. Chris Van Meter takes it down. Jumping into this one, they're taking a look at their opening 7. As always, hoping for no mulligans.
Yep.
You just want to see some good magic
Yeah,
happen.
7-card hands always make the best games of Magic.
Dinrova Horror, though? Yes, and they're going to keep. It's going to be a land coming on down, and we are off to the races. Dual lands for everybody.
Dual lands for everyone, yeah. Yeah, with a lot of these 3-color or more battle decks, you're going to see a lot of enter the battlefield tap lands. The Guild Gates, the Gain lands, as they're called from Khans of Tarkir. These are the lands that really make these decks hum.
Avacyn's Pilgrim coming on down to the battlefield. A 1-mana for, 1-1 that taps for a white mana. Never mind. Not going to be sticking around too long as we see a quick removal of it from the field. Unfortunate.
Yeah, that Trial of Ambition has been doing a lot of work in these games.
Just so good. Just so good. So, we're going to see another one of these tap lands, and Michelle wrapped the aggro deck, the one that is trying to swing. On the bright side, no Disowned Ancestor this time, and that was a really big issue.
That's true, though now Michelle is stuck on 2 lands. Oh, she's just found her 3rd one, so she may be getting her game plan online here. I see a Skynet Legionnaire in her hand, so she may be looking to deploy that this turn. Though I think before she found that forest, she was looking to cast maybe a Call of the Conclave, maybe something like an Advent of the Worm. She needed more green and white mana, but now she's able to get that Legionnaire. Oh,
wow.
not for long.
Easy come, easy go. All right, Chandra's Power Helix is going to eliminate it. Chris Van Meter's got another land. He does. He's got a Swamp and 2 Dinrova Horrors.
Yeah, Chris hitting his land drops with much more consistency in this game, so we may see this one last for not quite as long as the last one.
Yep, Skylight Legionnaire going to be jumping through, or Sky Knight, I guess, not Skylight.
No.
I was so fascinated earlier when I had some of that light shining in on me that I've just got it on the mind. So that's going to go back to the hand after getting its chip shot in. This 4/4 now on the battlefield, and Michelle got to put something together, but this is a rough spot to be in, needing to discard those cards.
Yeah, this is a rough spot for her. It looks like she drew an Avacyn's Pilgrim this turn, but if she plays it, she won't be able to cast anything else in her hand, so she has a tough decision to make whether she wants to get more mana acceleration for her late game or sacrifice that going forward.
One dynamic that's been really interesting on seeing these decks is that so much of it, it's a pre-constructed deck, right? And we keep seeing these little situations in which what is generally, a really solid removal spell ends up being a little bit lackluster in some situations. Like these shocks that Michelle Rapp has available. They deal 2 damage, but that just has not been enough to actually get anything done, even against the Infiltrators, which are 1/3s, or against these Dinrova Horrors, which are 4/4s, Disowned Ancestor, which is a 0/4. Suddenly running those shocks is such a big liability, and it's a deck that has a pretty solid amount of interaction, suddenly doesn't really have the ability to interact.
That's right. Yeah, if Michelle were paired against, say, Josh Lee Kwai, who's playing the Merfolk deck, then those shocks would have much more utility. She would be able to, pick off one of Josh's creatures early, or maybe in response to a River Herald's boon. But against Chris's deck, they're not doing very much.
Yeah, and by the same, way that it goes, Chris's deck not particularly fast, but when it gets there pretty good. We're going to see a trial of knowledge here, and it might just be that Michelle is spending so much time trying to build this larger board that it's just disruptible by the way that Chris's deck got constructed.
So yeah, Chris digging through his deck here. I imagine he's just looking for more removal to deal with Michelle's creatures as they come down and keep getting hits in for 8 with those Denrova Horrors.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised to see him discarding that Is It Charm because it does have that ability to deal 2 damage as well.
Oh,
that's
it
why.
Looks like he had another one.
Ignore me. Ignore me. 2 Denrova Horrors crashing on in. We're down to 8. It's the final fateful turn for Michelle Rapp. Oh, wait. Hold on. Haha. Gained a life. +1 turn, please.
+1 turn. So she can play one of her spells this turn. The unfortunate thing about her draws in this game is that she wants to be able to play those mana creatures early so she can deploy multiple threats in a turn. Setting up turns where she can either sacrifice Draconic Disciple or maybe play both a Call to Conclave and a Sky Knight Legionnaire, but it looks like she's just going to have to settle for 1 token here, and that's a big liability if Chris has another Denrova Horror.
All right, so we have got, oh my goodness, more Denrova Horror.
Oh, no.
Yes, there's the handshake there from Michelle, and that is just not going to end up tying it together. Chris Van Meter, the champ.